In yet another twist to this championship fight, both McLarens were disqualified from the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which means it is going to go all the way to the wire with just 2 races remaining. And because, there isn't enough news this season, things are getting worse and worse for Lewis Hamilton. There is an awful lot to get into in this episode of Inside the Piranha Club. I'm Rebecca Clancy.
I'm Ben Hunt from Doha Airport.
Yeah, and Ben has more anxiety right now than any of the McLaren team because his board has just flashed up with go to gate. And if anyone listened to our last podcast, you'll know that Ben likes to be at airports at the gate about 5 hours early. So we'll rattle through it because there is, for what was an incredibly boring race, and because the race started at 4 o'clock in the UK, I really genuinely feel for anybody who got up to watch it because the first 2 editions were quite good, let's say. This one wasn't particularly great, I think. And then we didn't have a race result until about 10 a.m. in the UK. So, yes. So let's start at the beginning, I suppose, let's start at the end, I should say. The Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri, both disqualified about 4 hours after the end of the race for a very technical reason, which is the skid block underneath their car had worn away by more than the 1 millimetre that's allowed. They're 10 millimetres. You're allowed 1 millimetre in wear. They were both had more wear than that. McLaren have come out and said it's because basically they just didn't have the information they needed because they experienced way more porpoising than they had expected in practice, and therefore both cars were illegal. As soon as we got the information from the FIA that it was being looked into, it's a pretty clear-cut thing, isn't it? Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc both got done for it in Austin a few years ago. You either have more one-off or you don't. It's not really up for debate. It's a regulation, so teams can't run their cars too low. But, and here's why it actually matters, because Lando Norris's lead in the championship is still 24 points over his teammate and championship rival Oscar Piastri. But crucially, Max Verstappen, who won in Vegas, is now also just 24 points behind Lando Norris, tied for second place with 2 races to go, 1 sprint race. Everyone is currently on a plane now heading over to Qatar for the penultimate round and then on to Abu Dhabi. I mean, this championship is going to go to the wire, isn't it?
Yeah, I said there was another twist coming. I didn't
You
quite see this
did,
happening.
and I made fun of you, and I was wrong.
Yeah, you did. I find it a little bit frustrating, this FIA penalty. I think it was the same. It's not a great look for Formula One. It happened in Austin in 23. You mentioned Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton weren't in the same team at that point. But excessive wear on the skid block and both get penalised. And I think it's quite difficult for the American public to get their head around the fact that we've got this race that goes on too long, and then ultimately the verdict and the result is different to how they saw it all play out. So it's not a great look. Of course, what it has done, it has mixed up the championship once more, and obviously it's twofold. You mentioned Verstappen winning, so he's got all those points, but his nearest rivals haven't got any. So it's all going to be very delicately poised. I mean, amazing to think that we're going into these last 2 races, and Verstappen's in the mix. It's crazy, isn't it?
24 points separate the top 3. I do agree with you, actually, because this rule, it is clear-cut, you're in breach or you're not. But for a new audience to try and understand, so Lando Norris, McLaren have been very good, as ever, as you might expect. They've given us all the details. Lando Norris was in breach by a maximum of 0.12 millimetres, and Oscar Piastri was in breach by 0.26 millimetres, which is almost undiscernible to the naked eye. And we do talk about Formula One being in millimetres and milliseconds and by the smallest of margins. But that is really just slightly hard to get your head around, isn't it? That they've now been disqualified and it could play a major part in the World Championship.
And also it's the component itself. The plank is a piece of metal that goes underneath the car. And the idea is that there has to be these tolerances so teams don't run the cars too low. But it's pretty superficial. It's not massively performance enhancing. It's just one of those things. And the fact that it's called a skid block or a plank doesn't help its cause.
No.
It's not really massively technical. It's not like a
No.
big rule infringement. If they were using wrong fuel or, turning the horsepower up or whatever they were doing, I could totally understand it. But, it's just a bit ridiculous. But that's where we are. They're the rules. And of course it breathes new life into the championship. So I think it's going to be interesting. I mean, we spoke a lot in this podcast about Norris and his ability to come back from adversity. This is another one. A crucial time. He had the momentum, everything was building, it was looking good. He's going to have to dig deep now, coming into Qatar, knowing that Max is coming. He can see him in the distance and he's definitely catching. So, he can't afford to stuff it up now.
No, and actually, if I'm Norris, I'm probably not as down about this weekend as I possibly could have been, because he was on pole. He has obviously got the pace. He had a good overtake. Okay, we'll come back to the turn 1 in a second, but he ultimately finished the race second behind Max Verstappen. So actually, it was quite good damage limitations in that regard, because all he has to do really at that point was finish ahead of Piastri. And then George Russell was in third and Kimi Antonelli in fourth. So obviously we now have 2 Mercedes drivers on the podium. But it was a really good weekend from Norris otherwise, except that first corner. And I'm just going to say it. If you were going to block Max Verstappen like he did, and I loved it as a move, I thought it was really aggressive, exactly the right thing you want to do. You cut straight across, straight in front of the second car. You've got to then make the corner, haven't you?
Well, yes, that's the thing, isn't it? Again, we were talking about, don't do anything silly in those first couple of laps. And, that would have been the advice, I'm sure, last thing they would have said to him getting in the car. Don't do anything silly, just get the points, get as much as you can on the board. So, but then these are racing drivers, aren't they? They risk it. So that's what we like to see.
We were talking about it in the last pod, weren't we? Because how do you approach it? Norris could afford to finish second in every race and win the championship. And he clearly hasn't got that mindset at all. And that's what I quite liked about that move into the first corner. No.
I don't know a driver it does, though. Do you know? They're all hardwired to win, aren't they? So no one's going to be playing it safe.
No, certainly not now. And it's really funny because our conversation we were discussing, Verstappen came out, didn't he, on Wednesday, media day, and saying, I'm definitely going to run with 33 on my car next year. And if he does win the championship, and my goodness, I think it will be his best ever if he does, I wonder that soundbite will come back to haunt him, I'm sure. But in terms of Piastri, it wasn't his fault. He actually had an okay weekend. It wasn't great. Certainly not the measure of the man that we saw at the start of the season when he was winning all those races. But actually, he could have taken some strength away from this weekend, if not much hope in the title fight. But now he's tied for points with Max Verstappen, who at one point was 91 points behind him.
Yeah,
not that long ago, this side of the summer break.
I don't think there is anything that he can take away from these last couple of races, really. I think that, since summer break, it's been totally in reverse. I don't know why. The thing that he needs most now is time away from Formula One to analyse where it went wrong. How did he lose this championship? Because it was his to lose. Everything was going so well. Quickest car, few mistakes. Everything was going so well. And now we've seen the reverse. So he needs to unpick it in time for next year if they're going to have half a chance, depending on the rules.
Producer Miles has made the good point and asked the question, how damaging will it be for Piastri if he does end up finishing this championship in third?
I don't think that matters. The fact that he's lost it, or potentially is going to lose it, I think that's all that matters. No one cares about who finishes second or third. It's a pain that they've all got to go to the gala. They don't want to do that unless they're winning that prize. So I don't think he'll be.
Where is it this year? Uzbekistan or somewhere, isn't it?
I'm not sure, actually.
I feel like it's in Uzbekistan randomly.
Rwanda last year, wasn't it? Of course.
Yeah, and then it was Azerbaijan the year before that. It's Yeah, you're right. Absolutely, no one wants to go to the Donna. I know. Like with the tourism board getting involved, I'm sure. I agree. I think a driver wants to win the. I mean, Lewis Hamilton used to always say this to us, didn't he? That if he didn't win, he didn't care what other than winning, it doesn't really matter where you finish.
Yeah.
Every driver hates the FIA gala. The best story was Kimi Räikkönen a few years ago, wasn't it? He was third and he just got absolutely smashed. If you've never seen the video from Räikkönen at the FIA gala, he's like climbing over barriers and just having the most amazing time ever. It's a very important. I have been invited to go a few times and I have managed to get out of it. So yeah, pretty pleased about that. But I think for Piastri, it's over. I think it's been over for a while, sadly, this season.
Yeah.
I sort of feel a little bit like, looking at his. I am not a body language expert, but looking at his body language over the course of the weekend, and he has to go into all these sponsor events with Lando and Norris, and he never really looks comfortable anymore. Like he kind of looks a different figure now from the one at the start of the season with all the promise. It feels like this has slipped away from him. Now he's level with Max Verstappen. There isn't much between the McLaren and the Red Bull now in terms of race pace, if anything, really. And so actually you're thinking your money's on Verstappen now against Norris. Yeah. And I'm not in a position to pick between those two, but it doesn't feel like Piastri is really in the hunt.
The only thing I would say to caveat that is that you just said he's level on points with Verstappen. Verstappen's a 4-time world champion, arguably the best driver of this current generation. We've got 2 races left and he's level with points. So he can take some heart in how this season's gone. He just needs to analyse where it went wrong. And as we said, it's kind of after the summer break. Maybe he was in this feeling of, maybe he started dreaming about the championship. Maybe that's where it all went wrong. He started to believe that he was going to win it. And for the other 2, it seemed unattainable. And that allowed them the freedom to, to not stress. Whereas
for me, it was Monza. It was those team orders in Monza. He's never been the same since. And actually, he came out, didn't he? And he said, I think it was the start of this weekend, that did play on his mind. And I think it probably has a lot more. For him to be so honest and admit that now within the same season is quite amazing. And I think actually that has hurt him. So, I said it a few podcasts ago. I've not enjoyed watching Piastri in these last few races. I just feel for him so much. You can see it slipping away. You can see he's not really coping with the pressure. You can see it's difficult. How's the boarding gate, Ben? What's it saying? Ben is off to the Gold Coast for his World Superbikes. So he's
Supercross.
What's Supercross? Sorry. Oh God, look at me. Sorry, plug in the wrong championship.
I don't know. It's not on the right thing.
Okay.
Listen, in terms of feeling awkward and uncomfortable, I think that we need to roll on to Lewis Hamilton. And I wrote an article for GP Blog before flying, but it was all about how the Ferrari chairman sitting there saying, to his drivers, be quiet, don't talk out. Well, there needs to come a time when Ferrari start listening to those drivers, because it wasn't just Hamilton that was critical. Started 20th, finished 10th. That's an achievement in itself, but again, no comfort in that. Leclerc finishing P6, obviously he will move up with the result of the penalties, but 6th quickest, it's not good enough. And I think that, the warning signs are there for Ferrari. They need to start listening to the drivers and to find out what's going wrong, because 26 is not far away now and they cannot afford to have a bad start. Otherwise everything goes tits up, doesn't it? And they're playing catch up massively, depending on where they all shake out. But they just can't afford to have another season like this, where they're constantly struggling to understand. They go from one race where everything's great, then another one where they're back at starting, looking at everything again. There's no consistency, and I think that must be hugely frustrating for the drivers, and they need to start listening into why that's happening.
I 100% agree with you. For the first time ever, in case you missed it, Lewis Hamilton qualified last based on pure pace. It was truly astonishing to watch. It was an okay race. It was a pretty good first couple of laps. He made up some ground. But he came out of the car on Saturday night just a kind of shell of himself, I suppose you'd say. Yeah. He told anyone who was listening and put a mic in front of him that it's the worst season he's ever had. He said he wasn't... He said it, but I thought what was actually more amazing was that he said he's not looking forward to the next one. And he was talking to the BBC's Rosanna Tennant, who's brilliant, and pushed him on it and said, what do you mean, the next race? And he said, no, the next season. So bearing in mind, he will have been involved in the development of 2026, the huge regulation changes that we've talked about endlessly. and he is not looking forward to next year. That suggests to me that it's not actually about the technical and engineering side of it. I think that place has a cultural problem because they're not listening to the team. Who are they listening to?
He doesn't like what he's seeing. That's something, isn't it?
And it feels like a blame game. The drivers are blaming the car. The chairman's blaming the drivers. It's like, what is going on here?
Yeah.
It's
a mess.
Deeply unhappy camp.
Yeah, and I can understand why he's frustrated. They're not in contention for fighting for wins. They're scrapping, occasional podium sniff for Leclerc at least, and it's just not. We knew it was going to be tough, but it's next level tough. It's really hard to see a happy ending with all of this.
Yeah, apparently he's going through Maranello on his way to Qatar to look at the 26 car, so that could be interesting, saying it's the busiest he's been, which I guess is in terms of trying to get this Ferrari to work. But if you're him and you're in Maranello and you know that the team aren't really listening to you, you've got to be thinking, this is just a waste of my time, right? And let me tell you, Lewis Hamilton is not alone in this when he says he hates doing sim work. It is a necessary part of the job. None of the drivers really enjoy it. But I remember when he was at Mercedes, wasn't that long ago to be fair, and he was doing more and more sim work to try and help them improve. But at the time, he became quite vocal saying, they're not listening to me, they're not, nothing's changing, the car's getting worse. And it feels a little bit like he's jumped from one fire into the frying pan.
Yeah, he said the same.
Whatever that phrase is.
Out the frying pan into the fire.
That
it's
one
just
too.
Not being listened to. That's probably how he feels. But
yeah, I like astonishing 7-time world champion. Who's not listening to him?
Not sure.
That is bamboozling.
Sure.
The amount of people just in life, like all these high performance coaching people who are like, what can you learn from sport? I'm like, anyone would pay to go down the pub with Lewis Hamilton and say, just talk at me. And whatever you've got to say, there's wisdom in it and I'll listen to it. Surely his engineers are thinking that.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, and I think that's why that needs to be communicated. What is the problem? Why are the drivers speaking out? Why are they getting told off for speaking out? Just not happy at all.
And a lot of drivers are insecure, aren't they? Most of them actually, and they do need a bit of an arm around their shoulder, and it doesn't really feel like Fred Vasseur is the person doing that at the moment. It's good. Lewis Hamilton has a strong personal team around him. He's got Angela back this year.
Yeah.
Mark Hines is back as his right-hand man. So he's got a very familiar team and close-knit team around him. But it just feels like they're kind of the people around the edge of that aren't quite working the way he would like.
Yeah, disconnect.
Yeah, big time. Quickly, because before your flight goes to final call and you have a heart attack on camera.
Yes.
Did you hear the rumours in the paddock that Christian Horner is going to replace Andy Cowell at Aston Martin?
Well, I mean, look, these keep going round and round and round, but there's no way in a million years that Christian Horner would want to work there because he would find it too uncomfortable. Or not uncomfortable, but Lawrence Stroll wouldn't listen. If Horner turns around and says, look, we've got to fire Lance, that's going to be very awkward, isn't it?
Yeah, also, the Max Verstappen going back, the rumour, I think people have very short memories in Formula One.
I think you're right. I can't see it happening, but then look,
No.
You never know how it's all going to play out. I think I think the relationship that Christian has with Adrian is still strong.
Yeah.
Despite what happened, I think they're still close. But I just can't see him fitting into that organisation. He was part of the reason he was unhappy with Red Bull was Red Bull trying to take control back, whereas he wanted it to be his team. He's not going to have that freedom, probably, with Lawrence Stroll being there, because he wants to control the team. It is his team, rightly so. So there will be, there will be conflicts there, and I don't think that would be the right choice.
Yeah, as if there's not enough to talk about already. Right, we will let Ben get his flight to the Gold Coast.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining us. And obviously we have Qatar this weekend. They're going to come thick and fast, and I will be in Abu Dhabi for what looks like will be the climax of the season. Although it has to be said, Lando Norris still can win it at the next race, which does include a sprint race. So I think it's 33 points on the table. So it is still possible that Norris could be championship come this time next week. Somehow I don't think so. But
No,
anyway, we have a lot. a lot to talk about. Where will you be? You'll be in Sweden, will you, for the last race of the season?
Yes.
No, okay, right. Well, I will be in the paddock, so I will be bringing you all of the gossip. Right. Well, thank you very much for listening. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please do rate and review it. Any questions, as ever, please do get in touch. All our socials are at Inside the Piranha Club. But until next time, unless Ben misses his flight, and then there probably won't be one, thank you very much for listening.